All right, guys, and welcome to this week's episode of Community Talks. We're on episode 6 now. This week, we've got quite a special couple of guests on. We've got pro player Dido this time, and from North America as well. We have Repeat, CEO of Unite Gaming. This week, we're going to talk about the life of a pro. Of course, it's going to be myself, Infinity, joined this week, as always, by my boy Boffers. So jumping straight into the topic, quite a good one this week. Life of a pro player. I mean, how do we really start this one? Dido, yourself, you've been through the motions over the past, it's like 10, 11 years now, playing Call of Duty. Repeat yourself, I don't know how long you've owned Unite for, but again, quite a prestigious organisation. So both of you, quite, I guess, knowledgeable on the topic of Call of Duty. But we'll start with Dido from the perspective, guys, and welcome to this week's pro player of Community Talks. Where do you feel you are right now, I guess, in the Call of Duty scene, sitting in Call of Duty World War II?
For World War II specifically, I think I'm struggling personally. Since the start, I think the system has been set up in a way that you need to perform either in pass CODs or you need to perform for the very first event this year, which was Dallas, and we had a poor performance. And I think that set us up and domino effect us to the position I'm in today. Specifically and technically, not a pro, obviously, in this game. We're competing in the national circuit, and we're doing pretty well right now. We're 5-0 in the North American National Circuit in first place, and hopefully we can carry this this wave into the Pro League for Season 2 and qualify for that. But specifically World War II, it's been a little bit of a struggle, but hoping to come out of this rut soon.
Yeah, and I think you said it right there. You said it was the system that you think was the problem. Now, I think it's fair to say that, like yourself, your best sort of, I guess, time as a pro player was Black Ops 2, Ghosts, AW, that sort of time. Maybe previously Black Ops 1, I think you had like a few third place. I think maybe first. I think you like second
third
national championships.
Third 3 times and second at Nats. Yeah.
Yeah. So again, back then, definitely one of the top boys in that sort of scene.
One of the big dogs.
One of the big dogs. Do you think? And again, I'll move on to you in a minute, Repeat, for this sort of question as well. But do you think it's the system? Do you think the introduction of the Call of Duty World League has been a problem?
I think the World League was a great idea. I think it's specifically the Pro Point system. Pro Points have been around for years. It's just changed so much. I feel like every year, it's 2 steps forward or 1 step forward, 2 steps back. The whole Pro Point system, playing 5 GBs a day for 5 Pro Points minimum that you have to do in the very beginning to keep up with the other teams. And then specifically going back to another Call of Duty, back to IW, you carry on your pro points and that sets you up with a better seed for the beginning of this game. So again, it's just, if you didn't play IW, which I didn't, I took the year off. I didn't like the game, I took the year off, and I bartended for an entire year. Coming back into this game, I was already at a deficit, picking up Rallied. He had no pro points as well. So only Proofy and Havoc had the pro points. So it was kind of difficult. So again, it goes back to the system and how it's structured. I think it could be a lot better. Black Ops 1, we had pro points, but you weren't competing every day for GBs and stuff like that. It was just, you go to an event, you get T16, and then you go to the next event and you're in pool play. But then again, the competition was super low back then. I think I was 15, 16, and that was, the players now that are 18, how old were they? Like 13 or 12, 11. So the competition has definitely gone up, and I think that's another reason why it's so dense now.
Yeah. I think there was something that me and Brody were having a discussion with previously. Actually, we're on numerous podcasts before. We've spoken about the CWL, the National League, the Pro Point system, etc. And we've always come to the same conclusion that Pro Points seem to be like so heavily weighted and doesn't make much sense why. Like there's just so much emphasis put on this Pro Point system as a whole, and it's not like you only have 2 other opportunities to get back into where you want to be, which is National Circuit or enough Pro Points, quite frankly. And I just attended Birmingham this week, not as a player but as a spectator, and I was watching all the open bracket matches, etc. And there was just so many people, so many teams who had like quality teams, all of them, and they just get like, there's no other way of saying it, just get bracket fucked because of the pro points. Like they should be making it like way further in that open bracket, even qualifying, but because they come up against like Lightning Pandas second round or something like that, people who are playing all their pro point matches and making themselves in 2Ks, and it's just like unfair competition, would you say?
Well, to add on to your weighted statement, I think for the National League specifically, considering I'm competing in the national circuit for North America, I think there's 3 or 4 of these, and the pro point system is definitely weighted. like obviously in ours, the North American one, the competition is super difficult compared to
Yeah,
the
yeah,
others.
yeah.
I mean, we have full teams. Complexity arguably could be in the pro league. Gone Gaming, we have just all these top teams, and then you have the Canadian League, and specifically you have Lightning Pandas, which is probably the only full team up there, and the other seven, however many are, they're all pickup teams, and they all join them because you're allowed to have two players from North America, or not North America, sorry, America, and then two players from Canada, and then that can be a team, considered a team. So you have players that are just meshing together for basically free pro points. It's
Yeah.
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
like an eighth lobby for the
That's a
entire
problem
thing.
over here too.
That's
Trust me.
one thing that I
European
noticed
leagues,
with the
yeah.
German national league. The German one's possibly one of the worst, and the Spanish one and Italian one. All the
Italian ones,
the
all of them,
outside the UK is one of the
amazing.
worst, because
Mhm.
an example that I'll bring to mind immediately is there's a team, the owner of which I know and all this sort of stuff, who won the German national circuit last season, Second Wave. Now, two of their players are from the UK, two of their players are from the Netherlands, and they compete in the German national circuit. Now, obviously, the two Netherlands players have to play in the German national circuit 'cause it's closest to them, but either which way, like they said in there's like one or two teams that provide competition, and the rest of them are just like walkovers. It's just a complete wipe.
Yeah, and the pro points are all the same across all boards. I think it's 3,000 if you win. So obviously, me competing against these top teams over here for 3,000 pro points is, why should I be getting the exact same as someone who's playing against a pickup team in the Canadian League, or vice versa? It just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, and I think the pro points are, to be fair, weighted in North America's favour when it comes to open events. I think there's a weighting system. I'm not fully sure how that weighting system works. I think it's like 1.5 times for North American teams, 1.25.
I've never heard
for
anything like this.
European teams. Yeah, it was to prevent some European teams coming into the first open. I don't know if it's still like it now, but I know in the first event they were waiting for regionals.
Oh, for
So I
real?
know that is that. Yeah, that definitely did happen because people were complaining about European teams and APAC teams coming over to America for the first event and getting like the top 8 seeds were like all European and APAC teams, which to be fair, I do think is wrong. Anyway, I think moving on from that, I think it's interesting to see Repeat's viewpoint on this because we haven't actually heard anything yet. As the Unite's owner, you yourself have seen, I guess, the perspective from some amateur teams because of course you do currently own 2, both of which placed very well. I think first and second at ETG in the past weekend. I think it was still last weekend, one of the two. I don't.
It's a good success.
Yeah, big success. So well done on that. But so you can see this from the perspective of amateur players, right? Amateur players who I'm not sure whether or not are 18 or not. I'm not fully sure on that.
Both teams are 18,
Right.
minus obviously Simp, who's with the United
Yeah.
Cadets. He's 17. But from the perspective of amateurs, it does hurt them in terms of not obviously being 18, but it also, they also have to deal with obviously being amateurs. They're not salaried and they have to go to work.
Yeah.
And some of them actually do work 2 jobs. So they're working, they have to come home and they have to grind, they have to get those pro points in, and then they go to these events and they essentially, like you guys mentioned, they get bracket fucked. And where they should be doing well, they don't do well, and it's just difficult. And you also see teams, or I should say orgs, that have mass funding, but they give amateur players so much in terms of funding, and it essentially ruins it for other smaller orgs who can't afford to pay for flights or to pay for maybe salary, like I've seen some smaller orgs do in the past. And it really just does affect the whole amateur scene. And the national circuit, it gave them a chance, but then you have all these pickup teams that literally just form, like you guys mentioned, just because they want to get into it. And, like Dito and his team, they deserve to be in it. And then there are some teams who are just a pickup team who essentially don't deserve it, and they strip a spot from a potential amateur team, which doesn't seem fair, but it's how the system is for now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but what would you suggest then to change those kinds of rules? Because obviously, I think me and George have had so many conversations on this, and I think we've got to points where we've agreed. Like there are so many rule changes where you could easily fix the problems with the national circuits. For example, say that 3 of the players have to be from that country designated for the region, rather than, for example, what you said with Second Wave, where it's 2 Netherlands players and 2 British players in the German
players,
national league. So I think maybe that's potentially a solution, but I don't know if you guys had any other ideas. I mean, obviously, Zido, you've been around for so many years now, so surely you have some kind of idea about what your perfect sort of system would look like. when it
Oh
comes
man,
to
you're
the
putting me on
national
blast here.
circuits.
You're putting me on blast. That was actually one of my ideas, was to have 3 or 4 players from that
Yeah.
region. That was just one way of right there, like Sensor right now playing for Lightning Pandas. Obviously, he couldn't just jump onto a Canadian team and play for them, and then move his pro points over there. So right there, that eliminates a really big issue. But or combine both regions. Have one.
Yeah.
It's why is mine
Yeah.
called the North American National Circuit, and it's North America? Like, why aren't you? You know what I mean? Like, it's got to be one big circuit, have one big season, and it's just adding. It's just more for. It's more content, more gameplay, more practice for all these teams. I mean, you don't play each team twice. You play each team once. So there's 8 teams. You play them. You play 7 matches, and then you have playoffs. We have 2 more left. We're 5-0, and then we play playoffs. So I mean, the practice is great. It's extra, but it's not as much as like the pro league.
Yeah.
And then even if you have to do it by pro points, I mean, somehow the issue with the pro points is you can't weight it to North America being better than Europe, because that's just offensive to some players. When the talent is out there, clearly they're coming over here, and the Giants, I think Heretics made pool play at this past
They did,
event.
yeah,
in
they did.
Atlanta. So I mean, the talent's out there. It's got to be done in a way that it's not offensive to the talent. But I think it needs to be done to where you can't just have a pickup team in a different region and get the exact same amount of pro points. It's not fair at all.
Yeah, I completely agree with that sentiment as a whole. Like, one thing that I always thought is, remember back in like Black Ops 3, Brody was talking about this as his ideal system for it. Is in Black Ops 3 you had
perfect.
European and North American online just league, right? And it was equally weighted. You didn't have a set number of slots for global pro league at a LAN. I don't understand why we have to divvy it up into national leagues as such, especially in Europe when we've got so many different nations and national leagues. Like, if you think into a CS:GO kind of, if you look at it from that perspective, this is a bit of a leap, I know, but like EPL and ECS, both the 2 leagues for Counter-Strike, have European and North American divisions. No discrepancies to, as to different nationalities or whatever. And then they have below that, they have like the second tier, which is Mountain Dew League, and then it would be ECS Development, right? So for each of those, you have opportunities there to get promoted into the pro league, and obviously playoffs and different invites, different competitions and whatever, because a lot of CS events are invite only. There's like online playoffs and that sort of stuff, online invites, but it's mostly invite only. I just wondered what would be both your takes on that, as from an organisational perspective, having an opportunity to be able to get a team that can work its way up and through, and being a team that can work its way up and through as well.
Well, I feel like that'd be really good. I mean, kind of just backtracking just a few. I feel like if you look at the AW scene, what UMG did, they had that UMG semi-pro league, and just look at TR. Exactly where Remy came from, or Facento. I feel like maybe not UMG do it, but have the CPL do it. I mean, they have the staff, they definitely have the fan bases, and that's a great way to grow the amateur circuit and give the Call of Duty, I guess the younger guys a shot, and do something that was just like that in the AW season, because Remy, Facento, Aqua, they catapulted. They went from the UMG semi-pro to placing second at COD Champs.
Yeah, in one event, pretty much, wasn't it?
Yeah, exactly. And I feel like if that were to happen again, keep everything as is. Maybe create another circuit just for amateurs and for strictly amateurs, or even for semi-pro players, and they can work their way up and they can go to these events and they have the chance to place well. And like Tito mentioned, there's talent out there, and it's just it's hard to see where it all is because of how strict certain things are. And I feel like doing something like that would really help bring more of the talent out, and it would help grow the community even more than it is.
Yeah, I think that's probably more or less the problem. I think the system itself is just not right at the moment. That the leap you have to make from national circuit to pro league is kind of too big. And there's nothing really below the national circuit either. While you've got like ETG and the Esports Open Tours, again, you can't really make that leap because there is no connection with pro points or anything like that. So I think maybe, I've said this, and George mentioned it briefly, I think the Black Ops 3 CWL system, actually implementing it properly like they were initially going to, because if I remember correctly, they were going to implement a UMG semi-pro league to the beginning of the season, but never
This
actually
season?
did it. UMG, no, Black Ops 3. So this was like
right.
2016. UMG were gonna
Back when we
host
used to have
some form
events
of
hosted by someone that isn't
actual
MLG.
challenger, actual challenger league. But that was before UMG South Carolina, and then the CWL realized that UMG were not competent enough to actually host any event without fucking it up. So
Jesus.
well,
Shots fired.
I'm not gonna.
They had a good few events before South Carolina.
Well,
You got to give that to
but
them.
I mean, they held the scene up during Modern Warfare 3 alongside the Europeans, but that was about it. But I think it's fair to say that a system like that is sort of the dream. I think it really helps a lot, because when you've got an actual structure like the CWL, where you've got a North American region with the prize pool they had, I think it was like 600,000 a stage or something like that. There was some crazy money in it. And then the European and Asia Pacific, and it's all good like that. I think it's perfect. I think the only problem would be online matches, which people can get hit off. Like I think it was a season 3 of Advanced Warfare
there was
that
like an
happened.
AW season 3
Advanced
MLG league.
Warfare. Everyone had to go to playoffs or something because
There was like a
the
mad
league-
hit off.
everyone got hit off
Do you remember
every
that?
single match or something. I think you must have played in that, Dio. I'm pretty sure you did. So I think you'd remember that partially, at least, when everyone was getting hit offline.
Yeah, that was. I mean, no matter what you do online, that's obviously going to be an issue.
Yeah.
The only thing that stands out for me is South Carolina. I had to stay up till I think it was 5 or 6 a.m. We had to play. They wouldn't let us go to bed until the
For
match
real?
finished. Yeah, we played till 5, 6 a.m. I think my team was E6 Gold, or it was me.
It was Enigma 6 Gold.
Yeah, it was like me, Swarley, Silly, and Assault, and we were up till 5, 6 a.m. and we had to be up at 8 a.m. for the next day of matches. So
Pretty crazy.
that
I think
event
to
was
be-
terribly run. for
To be
sure.
fair to UMG though, I think that was the first event that people started to realize about the Bluetooth issue. If I remember correctly,
Yeah.
that was the first time people found out that was a problem, because PlayStation didn't realize that Bluetooth would be an issue. Not
I
the
don't know
console
why
itself.
that wouldn't be something
Well-
to think about.
Well, I mean, it's
Anyway.
PlayStation that's the issue.
Anyway.
But anyway,
I do think that kind of links into a point that we were going to move into, because obviously this episode's titled Life for Pro, so there's obviously those sort of things moving in with events. Events from an organisational perspective, which Repeat can shed some light on for us, and events from the player perspective, which obviously Dido can shed some light on as well. Obviously we have South Carolina as an example of a bad event, but on the whole, what are your experiences of events? Do the organisations or the tournament organisers provide accommodation and practice stations well? Because I noticed at Birmingham, because I was obviously paying really big attention to the event because I was there, I saw a lot of people complaining, especially North American pro players, namely Aches. I think I saw complaining about there being no AC when it's 6 degrees, 6 degrees Celsius in Britain. It's not really something that's that necessary. But I saw that, and I saw there was a thing about as well, like only 4 teams could warm up at a time. So just wanted to get your view on those. It's just a quick gloss over point, just something that we'll quickly hit up before we move on.
Me specifically speaking is currently I play an open bracket because of the whole system. So when I'm playing, there is no warm-up station at all. So when
Yeah,
you sit down,
yeah.
they only give you, 2 to 5 minutes, if that, to
Shoot
sit
some
down.
bots or whatever.
Not even sit down, plug in all of your equipment, get all of your classes set up. 10 classes need to be set up for all 3 game modes. You have to host the lobby, and then if you're lucky, maybe shoot some bots. And that's if you're telling the guy, like, all right, hold on, like we just sat down, give us a few minutes to warm up. And specifically, our last match at Atlanta was against Most Wanted, PD's team, and we got done playing on main stage, which I don't even want to get into it with getting bracket fucked, whatever you want to call it, station fucked for an open bracket, but. We went from playing on main stage, which had like absolutely no latency. It was beautiful experience. And then we had to jump right off of main stage and go play at station like 2 or whatever it was against Most Wanted PD's team. And the delay was ridiculous. We were all like 7 and 22, and we just looked at each other and we just started laughing. Like, no one on my team is going to go 7 and 22, especially the whole roster. So I think that's another thing too, is the whole latency issue. But no, you don't get any time to warm up. You don't get any time to sit down and prepare yourself for the match. You kind of just jump in and then hope for the best. So
Yeah.
definitely, it's bad in open bracket. I know for pool play teams, they have a little back station that they can warm up in behind the curtains in the back. So they do have that priority, but we don't. So
Yeah, and looking at things, obviously from an org's perspective, I haven't been to any majors, but even looking at like the local scene, we had Unite at MES. It was in November, and the first night, it was Friday night. First off, doors opened up at super late. They didn't expect the turnout that they did, so props to them. And I want to say it was maybe 200 plus people showed up. I mean, obviously it was 110 teams that all showed up, but there were 8 side stations, main stage, and then they had a VIP lounge. But up in the VIP lounge, one station was down and couldn't be used at all. And then the other 3 stations they were using for open bracket as well up there. So, Unite, we paid for a VIP team pass, and we didn't have the ability to use the VIP room what it was intended for, which was for warm-ups. And we got there, we weren't allowed to warm up at all. We had to get to our match at about 9 o'clock. It was against Czar, and we beat them 2-0. It wasn't any. I mean, I'm not trying to rip on Czar, but it was slight work.
Yep. Easy points.
But, yeah. And then Saturday came up, and we were excited to finally be able to use the VIP lounge like it was intended for. And they tell us you can only shoot bots. Even though they had these stations that were set up so 2 teams can play each other, they were only allowing 2 shoot bots. So you could sit across from another team, but all you do is shooting bots. So you couldn't get a proper warm-up against another team. And we warmed up for about 5 minutes, and then the guys just looked at me and go, yeah, we're done. And we can't shoot any more bots. It's boring. And we went right from there down to main stage, where we ended up playing Royal Flush 7, choked a 5-0 lead in S&D, and it was embarrassing, but the guys bounced back. We won. But I mean, if we would have had that warm-up station available like it was used for or intended for, the guys would have been more well-equipped. And I mean, and just from a local standpoint, it should have been, I understand it's local, but it should have been more organized. These are the young kids that are up and coming, or at least up and coming, that should have an opportunity to play and warm up. But it wasn't, ran the best. I mean, even on Sunday, one of the side stations was down, and on Sunday they didn't allow anyone in the VIP room. So we had about maybe 8 or 9 hours in the VIP room, and it was shooting bots, and that's all we could do. So there was barely any warm-ups. I mean, they gave us 10 minutes to set up all of our classes and to host the lobby. So it was a little more time, but obviously less than 5 minutes. But it wasn't enough time to fully warm up like it should have been.
Yeah.
If the VIP room was there, we could have easily scrimmed a couple teams, but all we could do was shoot bots.
Yeah, at I-62 at the CWL Birmingham that I just went to this weekend, I was following a team around, a team that I own in a sense, and we had an open bracket match. First possible open bracket match that you could possibly have on the Friday at 11 a.m. So we go and play that match. We lose. It's just nature of the beast. Whatever. We come up against a really good team and we lose. So we then are in losers bracket, and we have to wait. Our next match then is at, when was it? 6:15 p.m. in the evening. So we've waited like 7 hours, right? And in that time, there's stations that are coming free because they're only playing out the winners bracket in that time. There's stations that are coming free. So they're asking admins and stuff if they can hop on to a station, scrim a team that are also waiting to play a losers bracket round 1 match or whatever. And the admin says no. And the station is, we look at the station, and the station's remaining free for about 2 or 3 hours at a time. And there's no warm-up area or anything like that. We sat down at 11 a.m. after they released the bracket late anyway. We sat down at 11 a.m. They shot some bots, like about 40, 50 bots, and just played the game. Completely cold. Absolutely nothing going. And they played later on in the evening. Still had the same sort of thing again. Had to sit down, shoot some bots, and then just played. Fortunately, they won that match and had to play again later at the night, around 9 o'clock in the evening. So we were going on late, and that's a CWL event. To be fair, the thing about Birmingham is that because it was European, I feel, or at least not because it was European, but because it was not necessarily having the same sort of attention given to it as, say, an Anaheim or an Atlanta or anything like that. It just wasn't enough stations. There was, 12 or 14 stations for open bracket to play the whole time out. We were late getting open bracket through for the main broadcast into pool play. They started playing pool play matches before 2 of the open bracket teams had finished getting in their spots for pools. So I don't know how much of a factor that ends up playing in terms of results for pool play. I'd say that the teams who deserve to get there in the end probably got there, besides complexity. They got a bit of a jammy finish. But we all saw how that one ended out on Twitter with Parasite holding up the fingers and all that business. But either which way, that's a point for a different time. Anyway, Brody, you can move us on.
I mean, I think now just moving on, I guess I want to ask you two individual questions because obviously, going back to the point, you guys have your own expertise in the scene. Again, Dido being a player, and repeat yourself, owning Unite. So I'll start a repeat here, right? So I'll ask the question because I don't know. Again, I don't know if you can clarify this. How long you've owned Unite for yourself?
Since September 24th.
So you've just got an org that, to be quite frank, has had one hell of a legacy, right? Unite in Black Ops 2 had an absolutely sick time, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Holding some of the best pro players. I just want to ask the question, to be quite frank. Do you like see it getting back to the same sort of? Do you see yourself being able to bring that sort of organization back up to the same level, or do you see the system that we've just talked about, the CWL, and now the need where it's completely different to Black Ops 2 back in 2012, 2013, where now pros need salaries, pros needs just everything really, like accommodation. I don't know how well the accommodation needs to be because in Birmingham you're not going to find good accommodation.
Just travel lodge, isn't it?
Travel lodge, just no AC. But I don't know. Do you feel like you can bring it back to the same level as it was?
To be completely honest, to bring it back to that same level, I feel like is nearly impossible nowadays. And, you know, I know that sounds weird. I mean, obviously it's a huge long-term goal. I mean, you can ask any org owner, we'd love to be at that point. But if I was owning Unite, say back in Ghost, I definitely feel like we could be at a huge position right now. But nowadays, if you don't have a huge investment from, you know, any from any angel investor,
or like a venture capitalist, something like that,
yeah, exactly, of at least, you know, maybe 100,000 to even $1 million if you look at like how Optic and Envy, you know, there's almost no way you can make it. It's Call of Duty has become so expensive. You have players that place top 64, not going to name any names, that want full funding. They want flights, they want hotel, and they don't want one hotel, they want two hotels. No one wants to share a bed and sleep on the floor. So they want two hotels, they want apparel, and on top of it, they want a salary. And even if it's just for one event, they're expecting, you know, anywhere from, you know, we've seen from 2K to even 6K. And it's just absolutely ridiculous. You know, if you look at a 6K salary for 4 players every month, that's $10,000 a month that you have to issue out on top of flights that can be pretty pricey. And especially if they're a last minute book, I mean, your team pass and your apparel, you know, those are considered small purchases. You know, your apparel can be a one-time purchase. And then your team pass is obviously almost a fixed price. It's about $300. It's not going to go up. If it does go up, you know, you got to pay for it. But if you don't have the funds nowadays, there's essentially no way of making it. You need, you know, enough money to make it. You have to pay your players, and if you don't, you know, you're picking up a top 64 team, and you're, you know, giving them, you know, maybe a hotel room, you know, maybe a flight or two and apparel, and you know you're not going to get a return on it. So, you know, going back to it, I honestly don't see Unite being back to where it was. You know, with players, you know, like Nameless, Embos, you know, Clayster, Ricky, all them, because, you know, alone it's going to take so much money, and you don't have that back, and you're not going to go anywhere.
No.
Well,
you can.
No, go on.
I was just going to say it's a sad reality, really, when we have so many great organisations who, if you look at the legacy, and when we were back in 2012, 2013, when we were building this esport that we love, that we were all competing in, that we all profit or at least have some sort of growth from. It's sad that we leave these organisations by the wayside in preference of venture capitalism and money. It's a harsh reality. Not one that we can do anything about, but I was just commenting on how it is sad that we have an organisation with such fabled and tailed history that is no longer having the ability to get back to the glory it once found because of simply just growth.
Yeah, I mean, and it just comes down to things. I mean, like, there are a lot of words. I mean, I can think of, you know, a couple, you know, hell, I mean, like, even look at Prophecy. After Call of Duty, we really haven't heard of Prophecy. I mean, I know Stunner. You know, they're kind of, I mean, they're no longer in the scene. I mean, hell, even Fear, you know, look at Fear. They're sitting there, and, you know, Mojo's hanging on to it. He's waiting for that opportunity. I mean, obviously, I know he wants to compete again, but if you're not a millionaire, if you're pretty much not Bill Gates rich, you know, it's nearly impossible to get into. And, you know, if you're an org that's been around since then and you've been active, you have that foundation to grow off of. And I mean, like just look at Optic and Envy. I mean, and just look at from where they came from to where they're at now. And I feel like orgs that were forgotten and left essentially
Optic corporate now, yeah.
Oh yeah, corporate Optic. But just all the orgs that were left, in the back that, I mean, a perfect example is Unite. Trying to revive it. It's fun. We're a huge name. People recognize us. But if we don't have the funds, there's nothing any org can do. And it's sad to see all these orgs that are in the past that are great, and there's just nothing they can do because of funding wise.
And I think I fall in that category as well. I mean,
Yeah.
speaking my specific situation going on right now is we're 5-0 in the circuit. We're very close. We're 2 weeks out of Seattle, 2 weeks out of relegation for Pro League, and we have all this stuff coming up, and everything's lining up perfectly in our stars. But orgs aren't picking us up because they don't have the money. And although we are asking for salary, I think it's only fair. You can't expect players to stream and grind Call of Duty, represent the team, and do everything for the team if we're not getting paid for the team. And I know it is a good amount of money, so I see where the orgs are coming from. But let's just say hypothetically someone's asking for $12.50 a player. That's below minimum wage, super below minimum wage, like $500 below minimum wage. So you're asking us to do full-time labor for less than minimum wage, for less than part-time work, exactly. So it's like it sucks being a player and having to do all this stuff, but it's also understandably correct coming from the organization's point of view.
Yeah, I think that's a general problem. I'm not gonna lie. I think being like pay. I think what people want to pay for stuff, I think is generally speaking a problem anyway. Organizations do not want to pay players' salary, even though they should. I think some tournament organizers, I think me and George have talked about this in the past, not to fire shots or anything, but don't want to pay casters proper pay, and they deserve it. To be honest, that's not necessary to say that we do, but and I think on the same level, players do as well. I definitely think I agree. I think if you're a national circuit player, not necessarily in like German national circuit, Italian national circuit, all that. That's just because you've got a pickup team with a couple of Netherlands players. You deserve a wage at least for putting in stream. But I think on the flip side of that, it's fair to say as well that if you are getting a wage, you need to be putting in time on stream, content creation for that organization. I think it's a two-way street, really. I'll be honest. I think if you're going to be getting a salary, you need to be putting as much work as possible.
I believe in incentives. I believe in a base salary and then incentives. It doesn't have to be like, let's say we're going at $12.50 as the top number. I could say a $7.50 for the base, and then for every, like, you stream 100 hours for the month, you get an extra 200, 250, or you do a certain amount of YouTube videos, that's an extra 200, and it can add up, and that way the organization gets the representation they need and want, as well as the players getting the money they want. I do not believe you should get paid just to be a player for hypothetically Unite. Like, I don't think they should just pay me and me slap it on my header. Like, I don't think that's right. I think you need to work for that money, especially if you want to get paid for like a job. You need to do your job. Your job is to represent. Your job is to play. Your job is to
just swipe in and expect a paycheck at the end of the week without putting in the work. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I mean, and I feel like that kind of like correlates. I mean, I know like we had talked, like myself and ESPU, but I mean, if just looking at Gears, like what Gears of War is doing is really good. They're offering to pay for flights, hotels, and team passes for the top teams, and then essentially all an org has to do is come up with a salary, and that takes off a huge load of funding, especially the flights, for orgs to pay, and then they can put that money aside, and they can they can salary the players that deserve the salary, and it's just it comes down all to money, and when they're putting in the work, it's definitely worth it. I mean, like Dito and I had talked, what they're asking for as a team is definitely worth it. It's definitely reasonable and acceptable. And I totally agree that they are worth what they're asking for. And it's just a shame that there are so many orgs out there that can't afford it.
Yeah.
It all comes down to money at the end of the day.
Yeah.
For everything.
Yeah.
That's the sad reality.
I think the problem, though, is if anything, while you guys agree that this is a great idea, I think there are players out there who want a salary and don't want to do anything for it. I think that's the problem. And I think there are pro players who have this kind of attitude as well. And George is speaking, but his mic is muted. I can see his mouth moving, but nothing's coming out. I think that's generally speaking the problem. I wouldn't like to name pro players, but I think there are definitely players in the Global Pro League that would ask for a salary, and I think the majority of them are definitely getting it, but they're not streaming for it. They're not doing any content creation. Even Optic, they're not even creating content anymore off the basis that they don't want to stream scrims and stuff like that, which is fair enough. If you're not going to stream scrims though,
you're
good. You need to be streaming other stuff, and you need to be doing stuff for your organization, not necessarily that they need to be doing that for Optic, but to set an example for other players that definitely need to be doing stuff to earn that salary, they are not. So while I think it's all fair and good for players that, like yourself, that are saying that we'll do this and it's a great idea, because I think that's perfect, to be honest. I think that's a perfect middle ground between organizations and players. I don't think the majority of players have that mindset at all.
I think it's a complacency issue then at that point. I know some of these players are getting like $8,000 or a little bit less a month. So, I mean, you get that amount of money, you're not really going to want to work for it. I mean, unless it's something that you're forced to do. And that's, again, the incentive thing. You should be able to, even if you're getting paid that exact amount of money, cut down the salary and, 3/4 of that, and then have them work for the rest of it if they want the rest of it. And if they don't do their incentives, they don't get the money. So, I mean, that's all in the org too.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say before my mic decided to break on me. Was,
I saw you talking. I was just like,
weird.
Nothing's coming out.
I think the stream could hear, but it links back to a discussion we were having a few weeks ago, Brody. Remember when we were talking about the difficulty? Like, there was a whole debacle about, everyone was like, how can we grow COD? And then everyone was like, oh yeah, we just need players to stream more. Because we got a level of complacency where I understand not wanting to stream scrims because you want to get better, you don't want teams stealing your strats and all that kind of business, but I don't know if it's necessarily that deep. Like, I saw at least some effort from players to start streaming a little bit more. Like, I saw Clay popping on a stream of scrims without audio, and just in case of comms or something like that. And I saw maybe some of the Optic players were starting to stream something as well. But is that really the solution? But that was what we linked for a different discussion. But like Dido was saying, is that you need to earn your money, right? You don't need to sit there and just play.
Well, just to comment on what we're talking about, someone in the chat said, from Ascendant said, I'm right, but what happens when the exposure you're bringing doesn't correlate with the sales and the effort you're putting in? But that also goes back to the old saying, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't force it to drink.
Mm-hmm.
I can do all the promotion I want. I could wave a t-shirt in your face all day, but if you're not going to pay for it, I mean, that doesn't fall on me. I'm doing my job doing my job to promote it and represent it, but I can't force a customer to buy it. I can't force anybody to do anything. So, I mean, that's out of my hands.
Yeah,
I'm still doing my job.
You're doing your part, and I think that's fair enough. And I think on the other side of things as well, from an organizational perspective, how many organizations are willing to put in that kind of mindset on the same level? Because, again, it comes back to it. While players are, would organizations be able to put in that kind of money, that kind of monthly salary? Because even, I don't know whether or not you'd be able to say whether or not Unite can put in a monthly salary on that level. But I don't think for most organizations they'd be able to, and I think that's the problem, because people don't want to make content, and then people don't, if they're not getting paid for it, but there isn't really a way to get paid for it unless you're getting investments from venture capitalists at this point.
Yeah, true. I agree.
Right,
I think that's the problem.
Yeah,
it's a bit of a paradox at this point in time.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. I don't know how they agree. Oh, you go on.
Sorry. I mean, like, even just going back onto the whole, like, how to grow the community more. Like the COD community, I think another thing, like, just other than streaming, there needs to be that smaller company, and a lot of people, or well, maybe company, but like tournament organizer. I mean, everyone for a while kind of was like, maybe it's EOT, just hosting events just for the AM to grow. I mean, and I know, I forget what Call of Duty it was, but the open bracket teams were getting paid. There was a payout for them. It was small, but it was something, and it gave all the open bracket teams an incentive to play in an open bracket. They grinded, and I feel like something like that needs to come back. I know that a discussion that I had even with my staff at, like when we were talking about that, was that there were some pro players that, were, I don't want to call them money hungry in a way, but almost in a way that's what it was. They didn't feel that the open bracket team should be getting paid, and that they could be shoving that money more into, the actual tournament itself and increase the prize pool. But that helped, having a payout for open bracket teams, competing. And I feel like if we want to grow the COD community even more, there has to be some type of tournament organizer that's around and can host events, and whether they be a 20K or even a 30K event, and host them consistently and regularly for AM teams and top semi-pro teams, and help them grow. Not only to help orgs grow, but to help them as an individual player grow, And I mean, yeah, we see like NJ Rod doing that. I mean, just look at where they started. Like that's where Stumpy, like BL Fire, all those guys, got their start. But we need more of those around. We can't rely on just a handful of them, and we need the prize pool set has to increase. I mean, like Tito mentioned, it comes down to money in the end of the day. But you have to spend money to make money, and if the AM community / semi-pro scene can earn money in another way, and grow the brand. I mean, say we did that with Unite. We could grow in, I guess, like a D2 community, and then grow and advance and have those funds and grow into a bigger and better organization that can potentially fund a major team. But there needs to be some type of tournament organizer that can put that kind of money up, and it can be a guaranteed, not depends on the amount of teams competing. It needs to be like a consistent 10K or even 20 or 30K. I'm not asking it to be huge, but it needs to be a consistent prize pool for all the teams competing in. Even at an amateur level, it has to be there.
And we had someone on, it was a couple of weeks ago. We had Sean on, Spaceman. He's a caster who does do the esports
National League,
events.
I think National League caster.
Yeah. So no, he hasn't casted National.
No, she's not. Okay, never mind.
No. But what he said to us was that he gave us a bit of insight that actually there are tournament organisers such as Esports Open Tour that have suggested they wanted to run 20K, 30K open events, and CWL got involved in those events and said no.
Really? I remember him saying now. Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's something is that a problem? Do you think that the CWL is too involved? Because again, I think we talked about this momentarily beforehand. I said about the Super League. We always do come back into this conversation, but I think it's worth noting that I think actually the CWL may be stinting that kind of growth. If you know what I mean. When those events are being offered and the CWL are saying no, we can't really have those, that's a problem. I think. I
don't know if like, just to chip in on that one, we paint the picture that CWL are kind of like Riot Games with how controlling they are over like League of Legends or whatever. Are they going to go quite as far as to sanction absolutely no events that aren't MSI or Worlds or any of the splits?
Well, I don't think it's necessarily that. I think it's more the fact that when you have such a big gap already between the Esports Open Tour events, which at maximum I think is like 10K, I don't know the exact prize pool for those events, and then anything beyond that is the CWL events where you've got 200K prize pools, and then there is nothing in between, literally nothing. That is a problem. That is an absolute problem, because the gap at that point is yourself grinding 5 pro points a day to get potentially top 64 at a 200K event and not get anything back, not just for yourself, but for the org as well. So I think at that point in time, it's actually the gap in between those Esports Open Tour events, those level, I don't know if you're going to say like tier 3 events, whatever, so something like that, right? And then there is nothing in between. Not even the national circuit provides that kind of money. The national circuit is a 1K prize pool.
That's what it is in Europe, at least. I don't know what it is in North America.
No, it's 1K.
Is it 1K all over the place? I'm sure Dido can specify on that.
$1,000 for every single national circuit, which is, in my opinion, absolutely terrible.
Just put it out there.
I just don't. Oh no, I'll say it. I'll be quite frank. I think it is absolutely terrible that the level down from the Pro League. When the Pro League, I'm not sure of the Pro League prize pool. I don't want to.
I don't even think there is one. I think it's just playoffs, isn't it?
I think no. I'm talking about the playoffs itself. Pro League players. I'm not sure, but I'm sure it'll be 6 figures. And then the level below that is a 4-figure $1,000 prize pool. Let me tell you, right? The VAL European Championship had a €3,000 prize pool. That was an online event, and it has a bigger prize pool than the national circuit for North America, where it has teams that, quite frankly, like Dido said, could be in the Pro League. That is an incredible blunder on not just the CWL's part, but anybody who has any say in what goes on in Call of Duty.
Yeah, I mean, and they have the money, I mean, just looking at that, how, 1K, that's split between 4 people, that's $250.
Yeah.
How, I can't even pay my bills off $250, and that's crazy. Okay, you put $250 and now you have maybe say like $300 or $400 more dollars left in bills. Like, where is all that money going to? You cannot physically support yourself off of that, and I feel like that it definitely needs to be increased. And like the CWL has the kind of money. I just don't see why they're not increasing the prize pool, and I feel like that's a thing that could really help the COD community grow. Is just you need to show the initiative.
Yeah.
That's just, just 1K is just ridiculous.
Yeah, it's really top heavy at the moment. I think the Call of Duty scene as a whole is really top heavy, and eventually that's going to lead to collapse because at the moment viewership is down so much. I think I'm not sure what the grand final viewership was like for Birmingham.
I don't know. The crowd was the only thing I was caring about, though, man. That crowd was awesome.
The crowd was awesome, right? The event itself, brilliant, right? Inside I-62, brilliant event. Nothing wrong, right? But outside, from an outside looking in perspective,
I mean,
if you're getting 30k viewers,
there was quite a bit wrong with the event, by the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, if
there was the whole monitors and Cronus's.
The monitors issue. If you're going to but just look past that momentarily, right? You're going to talk about the event itself. The fact that the viewership is so low, I think it really is indicative of where Call of Duty is going, and I do think that is wholly because we are in such a top-heavy community right now.
And Fortnite.
Fortnite's killing us off.
Fortnite's killing Todd.
Yeah,
I think Fortnite's completely ruining us. I think you see the tweet that Scump Slacked put out of Scump at Birmingham, where he's like, "This is how this kid warms up when he's playing Fortnite on the PS4s."
Yeah.
I think that was just done for the tweet. At least I hope it was. But
but I also think I think the viewership's also dying because of the how people are complaining and bitching about the game. I mean, if you see your the people you look up to, your role models talking shit about something, you're going to do the same thing. I mean, regardless of you even know what the issue is, like if you're going to complain, they're going to complain. So I think it goes back it stems from a lot of little issues that no one seems to think about. I mean, if everyone went on Twitter and, they're only positive about World War II instead of negative, I mean, it's only going to benefit it. So, I mean, it could be, Fortnite. It could be the way we're talking about the game itself. It could be all the little issues. It could be the system. The system is a huge thing. The pro point system, that's a huge thing. That's why it's so top heavy. It's hard for some AM team to come up from open bracket to do a main event.
Yeah.
And do well. So I mean, it's so many little issues I think this year that need to be sat down, which I don't understand because they have these pro players from back in the day, Merc and Mud Dog and all these people that are in the studio making these games and making the rule sets and making the system, and it's still fucked up. And it's like, how you guys have done it for so many years. Like, take people from the community that are doing it currently and that see the issues and fix it, because it's not fixed and it never will be fixed. And that's why Call of Duty's taking a shit right now.
I think that's a fair enough, and I think do we just want to point out a quick thing is that out of all we've got 3 developers now in Call of Duty. After Advanced Warfare, Sledgehammer are affirmatively in there now as the 3rd cycle, right? So the general consensus is that Treyarch are gods. We love Vaughn. Vonderhaar is the Lord and Savior, right? But do you think that there needs to be more community interaction, like just making sure that we're listening to pros, listening to different people who are playing the game?
I wouldn't say listen to pros too much. I'm not gonna lie. I think there's a certain point where you start listening to pros, and then you get problems like the gentleman's agreement. Like as soon as that starts to happen, as soon as you start to listen to pros about every single little thing, then you start to give the pros a little bit too much power. Like for example, right now, I wouldn't be surprised if we were listening to the pros, Prime would be banned right now. And that's a whole different topic. But like,
does Prime need to be banned?
But like you would get down to the point where a pro would complain about something. If a pro on Optic Gaming complained about something, people would listen, and that's a problem. You cannot give the players.
You're
too much
weighting
power.
your pros, is what you're saying. Right?
Yeah. Like you that's a problem. I'm not sure how much to an extent Dido would agree with that. Like giving pros power in terms of what to say, what not to say, because
they're the ones who play the games the most. So if there's any fundamental flaws with the game, then
I think that it should be. They had discussion chats. It was like a Skype chat where there was people in there from Activision that we would voice our opinions to, and that's where they directed us to. They didn't want tweets, they didn't want shit like that because you get fined. They wanted you to go in these chats and voice your opinion, but the problem is they don't execute the opinion. Why are we giving an opinion if you're not going to do anything? And I think that's why another reason Fortnite is so fucking good is because they have all these changes and they're implemented so fast.
Yes,
if there's an issue
quickly
with like the double pump, it's fixed in a week or two, and at max a week or two. I mean, for fuck's sake, how hard was it to put in the camos or something, or I don't even know, because I don't even care about COD right now. But like it was like the camouflages or the customization to your gun or something. It was something specific like that in Call of Duty, and it said coming soon. And it's
in Infinite Warfare was that, or
it was
in
something.
Infinite Warfare we didn't have leaderboards, did we?
It says coming soon or something. Or just now they recently
like the emblem creator.
They put in the keychains and they just put in like these new camos. Like how hard is it? It's March, put some fucking Lucky Charms in a camo and throw it down there. Like it's just some code, some numbers. Like throw it down there, make some quick money. And that's another thing too. And that goes back to the whole like the crowdfunding and the whole the deals they had in Black Ops 3 where you had like pro player skins. Like when I was on Cloud9, we had a Cloud9 skin or
Yeah,
whatever
that
it
was
was,
sick.
a helmet.
Yeah.
I mean, how
Right,
hard
yeah.
is it to just implement that in the game? Someone buys it for $10. Let's split the profit. The org gets 40, you get 60 as the devs.
Kind of like
you're
CS:GO
making money.
stickers.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean anything you can think of. Like you're just making extra money. It doesn't hurt anything. What's the issue? Why aren't you throwing it in there? And it's only going to benefit the community.
That's another thing
Yeah.
as well. It's a neat point as well in terms of fixing the fundamental issues with the game. There's always been a gripe. Everyone's always complained about something every year in Call of Duty competitively, right? Start of Black Ops 2, we had the PDW that needed a nerf. They nerfed it, whatever. It's cool. And then they had the AN-94 and a bunch of other stuff, but people weren't necessarily too fussed about that in Black Ops 2. But I think one thing that you can go ahead and say is the Vector in Ghosts was completely trash. That we ended up having like 4 sub meta. AW, the BAL needed nerfing at first. It took like how many months? Like 4 months for the BAL to get nerfed. Like you've got all these different things happening in the game. There's always something that's like fundamentally game breaking about it, and then you're just throwing skins or camos and stuff in. Like I love the idea of throwing those things in to grow organizations, grow players, and all that kind of business. But when you're not thinking about the fundamental changes that need to be made to your game to make it more viewer friendly or more competitive as an overall standpoint, I think it's where do your priorities lie? You know, I know it's all about making money, but you've got to think about growing your brand of an esport.
Yeah.
Or even if it's, I know like nerfing guns and doing all these changes to certain guns was based off of like pub stats and stuff like that, but how hard is it again to have an esport mode where only the changes that you're making are implemented only on that esport mode?
I had a theory, or at least like an idea of a couple of months ago, where I made a video about it. It wasn't a particularly well made video, didn't structure it particularly well, but it's still, the concept was there, where you just release like an esports only title and just let a studio just have their way with that. Whether that be Raven, someone who's not necessarily even particularly involved with Call of Duty, you just let them run an esports only title where you make macro changes to different little weapons, balance weapons, take things in and out of a map pool, kind of like they do with CS, kind of like they do with League of Legends as well, with balancing champions and whatever. You just make these macro changes, and you'll have a blossoming esport because you only have to buy the game once.
Well, I don't know if that would work because I don't know how much support Activision would give.
That's
that
what I'm
game.
saying. Like, it doesn't necessarily need to have that
point,
much support.
Well, that's why he said a
Activision
third-party
wouldn't
thing.
give.
Yeah, so you make it third party.
But then the money wouldn't be there for the money, like the prize pools and
Yeah,
so on and
exactly.
so forth.
I think that's a problem in itself. I think that exactly, just said it. Like, as soon as you create a third game, which isn't going to get that yearly sort of support, like buy this new game, which every pro buys it, or at least.
I hate that about the game, though. I really hate that you have to buy it every year.
I definitely agree. I definitely agree that the fact that we have to buy it every year is ridiculous. It's basically a subscription service at this point.
Yeah,
buying
that's
it
right.
on
$16 subscription service.
PlayStation Network every single year. But I think the fact of the matter is there isn't really a perfect solution. If I'm honest, I think we can talk about it till the end of the Kingdom Come, but like I think what everyone's ideas are kind of different. I think you can get to the point where you can say the City World and Black Ops 3 was sick. We want that back. We want some kind of brilliant challenge to Division. But I think a point that Sean made in the chat, because Sean is actually here in the chat, so he said that actually the City World doesn't actually have the funding that they need for the Call of Duty Open events. Now, what I'm wondering is if they don't have the money and the Overwatch League does. Which it does,
where are Activision Blizzard sending their money?
Where are Activision's priorities right now? Because they're certainly
100% with the OWL. I'm sorry, that's just like.
Well, I think it's a good investment. I'm not
I think it'd be absolutely stupid if you weren't putting it in the Overwatch League with the figures that it's getting.
Yeah, but the thing is, I think
decision.
In a mirror to that, surely if Call of Duty was getting that same funding, so if you're still giving funding to tier 2 events, you were still giving funding to North America, to Europe and Asia Pacific. Which, by the way, they're not getting now. I think at that point, surely it's actually a problem where it's just money. That is literally it. The money is just not there. Fair enough. The prize pools are all going to top heavy. I think actually at this point, maybe Activision knows that this is a last ditch effort for Call of Duty, and that COD is definitely dying. Is that something that we could actually consider now that Activision now know that COD is on its last legs?
I wouldn't say that it's dying. I think that the decline of it's definitely been stunted this year. We're not declining as much as we were. Infinite Warfare was an atrocious year for COD.
Personally, I know this is, maybe nerdy or whatever, but looking at it from like a business product life cycle, how you have like your growth stages and all that, I feel like in a way, obviously maturity being the peak, of each product, I feel like Call of Duty, is at its peak or had reached its peak. I feel like it is in that downward like in that downward decline, but I don't see it officially hitting that dead period. I mean, for example, like StarCraft. I mean, I remember when StarCraft was kind of like an esport title.
The
that was
OG
big.
esport, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I don't know if COD will ever hit that dead point, but it's definitely in its decline stages. It's going down. Something has to be changed, and it can't be a micro change. It has to be something that's going to be huge, and it's going to change everything. And it needs to be with an esport. I mean, it has to deal with even like just the public matches, you know, and everything. It has to cater to everyone, not just one side. And I feel like that's the only thing that can really officially save the game itself. I mean, other than the community. I mean, the community is everything. You know, the community has to grow it. You know, like we have to stand together and grow it. But I feel like Call of Duty is in that decline stage. Will it reach death? I mean, it's a far shot, but it's a possibility. But I personally don't see it hitting that death stage anytime soon.
I think it might go the way of Halo. I think
Well, have like a bit of a renaissance.
That's not to say Halo's dead, right? Let's not say that. But I think,
Halo's having a renaissance for sure. Definitely had one a couple of years ago.
I think it's fair to say that, in my opinion at least, and again, you guys can say whether you agree with this and disagree with this, but I think Call of Duty is getting to a point now where it is definitely going downhill. I think it is definitely on its downhill stage right now. It has hit its peak. I don't know whether it will peak again or not, but it's not going to peak again the way it is going right now. The way that we have put, I guess Activision's put money into prize pools, the way that Activision's put emphasis on the top 16 teams in the world, not just any particular region. There is no real room for any growth for the new players to come through, and I think at this point in time, Call of Duty is not going to get better. Unless everyone puts in a group effort to make it better. So, like, we can do what we can. I think it's fair to say that everyone is doing what they can right now. For example, me and George, we do a hell of a lot of work, as do the other casters in the amateur European
Just
community.
to try and buff stuff
Yeah,
up,
just
I
to try and
suppose.
do what you can. But at that point in time, it comes down to developers, and to be quite frank, the support just isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, we had ESL in Black Ops 3, which is pretty cool. I thought. I mean, of all tournament, I think ESL were getting a bit too high on their own power there, though, because they thought they owned the world at that point, and now they haven't had a CS:GO major in like 3 years. So sucks to be them, I suppose. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll do one last topic before we run into some questions from the viewers. This is just one that was thrown in, obviously linking in with the life of a pro. Esports Universe have actually pitched this one to us themselves just recently, as the podcast has been going on. He said, we want to talk about the journey to pro and the journey of a pro organization as well. Like, how does it feel getting into the different lands? Is there nerves? Is there a risk that you have to take in terms of getting there? The question that they asked was more aimed at Dido, but I'm going to try and mix it out as well. But they said, the journey to pro, how did it happen? Were you nervous when traveling to different lands? Is it something that you get used to with the fans and the atmosphere? Now, the same thing can be pitched to an organization as well.
My story was a long process, but I made a YouTube video on my channel about it. But to sum it up in the best way I can was, my parents didn't believe it. My dad's super old school, so he thought that me going to a different state, and his thought process was some guy was paying to have his 16, 15-year-old son go to a different state was like super strange. And
Yeah.
they wanted to like that, like super weird. So he like didn't believe in it. So my first event was Dallas in 2011 for Black Ops 1. Me and Saints actually went to high school together. So me and him drove from Illinois all the way down to Texas. It was an 18-hour drive. We got 22nd place. Didn't do too well, but that was I got technically pro in MW2 with Fear when Moho and Sharp picked me up back then. But this was my first like LAN. So we went there. We got 22nd. Hell yeah, I was nervous. It was different. You're not in your own chair. You're not in your own your bubble at home, and the nerves are definitely there for sure. But the next event was Columbus. I got third with Fear, and then all from there it snowballed into something good. But it's definitely something that takes time. It's definitely something that you have to fight through adversity. The good thing was I lived at home, so I was just playing Call of Duty all the time. I think back then I was a sophomore in high school, so all I did was play video games. Didn't have bills. Now it's different, and this goes back to the whole money topic, because you have all these bills and all this other stuff that you need to take care of before Call of Duty. But to get pro was a great feeling, man. And that goes with anything in life, to work so hard for something that you put all your time in. I was an only child, so I stayed home all day. I would go to soccer practice and come home, and I would just play video games. And we couldn't afford internet, so I would have my friends come over. We would play split screen, and I would like fuck them up, and then they'd get pissed off and then want to go outside. But I mean, that's what I did. So I spent all my time in Call of Duty. So it's definitely a good feeling when you succeed in something you strive so hard to do.
Yeah,
for sure.
And I just want to punch that one over and just to adapt it slightly to repeat. Just to say, like, obviously with you jumping on, you're kind of having to do this journey backwards in a sense. You've the organization's already had the success and it's already had that nerve jitter period out of the way. Now you're looking to try and restore at least some aspect, some remnant of that former glory. For you, do you feel a sense of expectation or a sense of like anticipation to get back to where you want to be, or is that just something that you're just taking in your stride and taking it one step at a time?
There's definitely a level of expectation, and I knew I was fully aware that it was going to come when it was announced that I had owned Unite. I mean, the prior, I guess internally what I had wanted to do, which didn't do, which I don't regret at all. I would do my decision over again, which was the original idea was to just hold on to Unite and then just grow the funds, wait till after college, and give it 110%, put paycheck after paycheck after paycheck into it. But I told a couple friends, within the gaming community, that I've known for a while, hey, I got Unite. And they were like, what's your first move? And it kind of just got out, made the first move. And then with that, the expectations were there. When we picked up Remo and his team for Dallas, we got a lot of backlash for it. And we knew we were going to, like, everyone expected it because we were expected to be picking up like Parasite or
Killer or something.
Yeah, exactly. That was the level of expectation that was there. And we didn't fulfill that. And that was just a terrible place. I almost don't even want to talk about it, but it happened. It was a risk, and just going into that risk factor, you're going to win some, you're going to lose some. Even looking at New Orleans, we had, like the rest of the staff and I, we were set. We were like, we're not going to have a roster. It's unfortunate. We're not going to have it. And then out of nowhere, we have Proofy, who gets in contact with our esports director, Dylan. And we're just like, okay, I told Dylan there's no way we can get this. And Dylan just goes, dude, yes, there is. So I said, you know what? I said, he's right. We have, exactly. Like, we have to trust this and we have to do this. And then right after that, the opportunity came up to pick up BL Fire and his team. It came down to a split vote. We decided to pick up Proofy and his team, but we had that opportunity to pick up BL Fire. And BL Fire and his team, they went under In Control. And look at where they're at now. We could have picked up his team, and that could have potentially been us. Unfortunately, it was the risk that we took. We knew Proofy had that larger fan basis.
Yeah.
I wouldn't say that his fan base was the sole reason that we went there. We had confidence in him, and we had confidence in his team. The fan base has helped, but we could have had that opportunity, and that risk was there. And to pick up BL Fire, if we had to go back and we had to, choose who we're going to pick up, I would have definitely picked up BL Fire, but we had gotten, an enormous amount of sponsors throwing money at us just for picking up Proofy. We wouldn't have had that opportunity, potentially had that opportunity with BL Fire and his team if we had picked them up. We had, I have no problem saying it. We had Cinch Gaming, who was huge. They helped us out. They're, one of the main reasons we were able to get Proofy and his team out to New Orleans. Mm-hmm. And obviously ESPU, they helped majorly just as much, if not equally. But is it to say we would have had that opportunity and, the same funds coming in if we picked up BL Fire? Most likely not. It would have been more out-of-pocket pay.
Yeah.
But the risk would have been, or I guess the reward would have been, way better. And it was an opportunity missed. Do I regret it? To an extent, but do I absolutely hate the idea that we picked up Proofy? No, absolutely not. We picked up Proofy, we stood by it, and we accepted it as it was.
Okay, we'll say that's a good enough answer for now. We'll try and move on to some questions in the chat. So if we have any while we're asking these questions away, then throw them in here, and we'll be right ready to answer them. So I'll just have a quick look through, Brody, if you've got any already that you've seen.
Yeah, I think there was one earlier on, which was a question that was pretty cool. Someone asked specifically, it was saying that Dido, would you compete in those ETG, the Esports Open Tour events, and if not, why?
So it's just like a local somewhere?
Yeah, so locals, just like those Michigan's events.
Yeah.
So you'd still be down for competing in them. I think
I used to travel to eBash, if you guys have heard of eBash.
I
would go to there and I'd play and I'd compete and I'd win, but the problem was that there'd be a lot of backlash from kids bitching about me going because they felt like they didn't have a chance to win. And I made a video on my channel about it back when I was active, about if you can't compete with the best, then you don't deserve to be in the scene.
I actually remember watching that video. Yeah.
Yeah, so
I mean, not that you don't deserve to be in the scene, excuse me, but you have to beat the best to be the best. And if you have no aspiring dreams to compete at the highest level, you're just going to make a quick buck at a local, then you shouldn't be doing this. And that's what I tried to explain. And it's something that people have a hard time getting across, because it goes back to me too. Like, yeah, maybe I went to this event to get a quick buck, but I did it to compete too. So I'm competing, I'm getting practice, and I'm also making money. But at the same time, they could do the same thing. It's not like I was going to the event with Optic Gaming as 3 of my players. Like, I was still going with local kids from Indiana. But, I mean, just my presence there made people upset.
I specifically remember that event. It was AG in Indianapolis. It was held at the eBash Center, it was held at the eBash. And I saw so many people bitching like, oh my God, a pro player's going over. There's no way we're gonna win. And if correct me if I'm wrong, Dito, but I'm pretty sure you were under bittersweet off of that event.
Probably, yeah, sounds correct. It was like me, Demented. Yeah. I think. I don't even know, 2 other players, probably his brother Wolf and someone else. Like, it wasn't like I was going with a stacked roster or anything.
And the funny thing too, everyone complaining about that event, you guys at Bittersweet, you guys ended up taking second at that event. You guys didn't even win the event. And that was the crazy thing. I mean, and I know that you have won a couple of the eBash events, but I mean, we saw everyone complain about you going to AGN, and you guys didn't even take first. And that just proved your point. If you want to be the best, you have to compete against the best, and you have to be able to beat them. And the kids that beat you guys, they showed up and they wanted it more. And it wasn't even the fact that you just wanted a quick buck. They wanted it more, and they showed up, and you guys gave it all, and they gave it just a little more. And, I mean, and like I said, I watched your video on that, and you hit it every point on the head. I mean, you weren't going just because you wanted to make a quick buck because you knew it was easy. You were going to compete and get practice.
Exactly. But yeah, to answer the question, yes, I would go to locals. I think that's a great way. Kenny went to those. He drove from Tennessee to eBash, and look at him now. So, I mean, and I beat Kenny. I mean, but he's doing his shit now, and look where I am. So it's like...
Right.
Yeah.
It's only a matter of time.
Exactly.
Till we're back up
But I think it's a great way for people to go and get the practice they need and for up-and-coming talent.
Yeah, it links back in actually with what we were saying last week, Brody, with Gizmo and Hallie, is that there was a few weeks ago we had an Esports Universe tournament, in fact, in which was it Watson, pro player from Europe, competed in with his team from the national circuit, and everyone was just like kicking up a storm about it because they were like, "Well, we're never going to win. We don't even stand a chance, do we?" And it's just like, well, yeah, but you're never going to get better practice, are you, unless you're playing against good teams. Anyway, I'm just trying to run it back in for our viewers. Any other way, we've got a few questions, basically the same question from 2 different people. Danny and Memadope we'll go with. I don't know how to say the name. Either which way, it says, if I were to start competitive now, what would I need to know and what would I need to do in order to start?
That's a good question. You definitely need a scuff. You need
That's the first thing.
You need some type of product that's... you're at a disadvantage already if you don't have one.
Yeah.
Maybe not in these games because it's boots on the ground, but if this was like a jetpack game, you're already at a disadvantage. What you need to know is that it's going to take time. It's not going to come overnight.
Yeah.
Especially if you're young too, you could take that. If you're at home, living at home specifically, you can grind as much as you want to, and you can put the practice in. But it's going to take time. The number one thing I could say is you need to practice. You're going to take time. There are going to be a couple of events where you're going to have to go and spend your own money to get there. And you're going to have to invest. It's the same thing. You got to spend money to make money. For my first 3 events before I landed on Envy and Black Ops 1, I had to pay to get there. I drove to Columbus, I drove to Texas, and I drove to all those, like, I think they're Game Pazzo events that UMG used to host. Downers Grove, I used to drive to those too. Those were like 40 minutes away. So I drove and spent all my money to get there too. But yeah, practice for sure.
Yeah, I think it's important as well, just to add on to that don't outdo yourself. I think if you're going to start off playing Call of Duty coming from public match, you think you're dropping 40 bombs in public match, you're dropping nukes, whatever. I don't think it's a good idea to jump head first into the I don't think it's a good idea to jump head first into big major tournaments. I don't try and play without pro points. I think there is a technique to it.
A learning curve.
I think a learning curve is actually the perfect way to describe it. Start small, go big. Obviously, you'll get better competition as you go through, and you'll get more used to it as it happens. But especially in the European scene, I think there's definitely starting points to go from. The youth leagues are 100% the way to go, especially even, to be fair, even if you're over 18, there's still good prize pools to work with. You're getting that online practice and consistently scrimming with your team, practicing against the best teams. And then once you start doing well in them, maybe like top 6, move on to perform, start playing pro points, stuff like that. I think there's definitely a learning curve to it, but what I would say is just don't go head first into it. Don't go too heavy, because I think a player who just started off coming from public match into Call of Duty competitive, goes straight to an open major and then loses, is probably going to be turned off quite heavily.
Pro player Brody, some sound advice.
Yeah.
Either which way.
Well, that's just like me trying to go and compete. I'm hoping my teammates could carry me.
I haven't touched COD in 3 years, mate. I'd be equally as hopeless. Either which way.
Yeah.
Spaceman, a couple of podcasts ago, he was on, and he asked a question saying, maps are clearly important to the success of Call of Duty, to a Call of Duty title, as well as the gun balancing mechanics are. With those in deceased said, should COD go back to a non-yearly release to accumulate the ability for better maps and a meta to hold steady, creating less variance in pro support, and devs/orgs can privately fund the scene better?
I don't know about the funding, but yes, I think we should stick to a solid game. The problem is that we won't, because they make millions of dollars every year creating a new title, so we'll never stick to a game and sustain it. It's just impossible, and it won't have the support from the devs, and the orgs can't privately fund tournaments for $600,000. It's just not. It doesn't make sense. We have orgs that can't even sustain a $1,000 salary for some teams.
Or fraud.
So what makes you think they're going to fund a $200,000 open? And it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
It'd be great to see them, like you mentioned, to stick with, a game and not, go year to year. It'd be great if we stayed on Black Ops 2, but yeah, it's just there needs to be, support from everywhere, and there wouldn't be support.
What's that Call of Duty that's out somewhere? It's called like Call of Duty Online or
Oh,
something.
in China and whatever.
I think it's got like multiple maps from different CODs, from different guns, from different Call of Duties, all correlating in one. Yeah, like that's a cool game, but like we don't see that being played. I mean, you got an ACR and like a COD 4 Crossfire map, but we don't see that being played.
No.
Like, it's just not. It just doesn't make sense.
It was like, I remember watching some gameplay of it. It was like you've got an intervention on Nuketown, or you're cutting about the map with like an M4A1 on like Wetwork or something like that. And it's like you got all these fantastic maps, and you can just rejig them or anything slightly. Like you could move the laundry spawn on Raid back like a couple of feet, and you'd change the whole course of the map because the spawns changed or whatever. Like you can just make micro adjustments to that to a map, and it keeps the longevity of it out. It's what they do with CS:GO. They just change like a few aspects, a few lines of sight, a few different nade spots, put some objects in the way, or release a skybox or whatever, and you've got a whole different player map. The map becomes like different sided or whatever. So there's obviously lots of different things that you can do. I do think that the non-yearly release thing would be really interesting to see if it would work, but I don't know if it would. I want it personally. I want to see if it would help. But I like we said with the sort of funding from Activision, I'd be skeptical.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, if there's any other questions that are in the chat, then I don't know if Brody's seen any, or if you two have seen any.
No.
Then I think that's a good place to end, because we've come full circle. We've gone from where we started pretty much to where we finished. So I'd just like to take the time to thank Dido and to thank Repeat for hopping on the show today. Obviously something they don't have to do, but they're taking the time out of their day to do so. So much appreciated. Everyone in the chat, make sure to go follow them. Obviously, their acts are on the screen if you don't follow these two wonderful gentlemen already. And next week, we should have some more interesting guests coming up for you. We're working our way
We won't say anything about it yet.
We're working our way through everything. We haven't got it confirmed, but it's on its way. So thank you guys, as always, for watching. There's obviously Easter Cup matches coming up for the remainder of the week. Myself and Brody will be casting those. And we'll be back just tomorrow. So tune in, make sure you follow the stream, and follow the Esports Universe on Twitter.